Religion is something much more subjective and transcendental than something physical and immediate. Because of that, it's natural to imagine that she doesn't do very well with science, right? Mainly exact ones. However, time and time again, the two streams of thought align in very impressive discoveries about the history of our people and the world. Today, we're going to see a video with the 8 biblical events that, in a way, have already been proven by science at some point. Come with me. Don't subscribe to forget. Leave your like and a comment. Because I'm Tiago Tadeo and welcome to the Upside Down. Crossing the Red Sea. According to biblical texts, the story of the escape from England led by Moses is definitely one of the most magical moments, so to speak, of all ancient history. This is because, during this event, the people of Jerusalem were fleeing the imminent slavery they would suffer if they remained in Egypt. In an act of desperation, they fled the region, being led by Moses to the Red Sea, where with God's help, he was able to part the waters and allow the safe passage of his people. As much as this was a divine phenomenon, some more recent research in the region has shown that there is a possibility that this might have happened naturally. Remembering, my dears, that there are two looks there, okay? 2 types of visions, the religious one and the science one, okay? It's not to say which one is right here, but to say when they fit together. Well, in the place in question, at certain times of the year, there are very strong winds, which at some point even manage to cut the waves in two and allow free passage for a few moments. In the case of Moses, there may have been an unusual gale which left the passage open long enough for them to escape. Something that could be both an impressive natural phenomenon or even something truly divine, right? This idea is reinforced by the knowledge that there was a very violent volcanic eruption close to the time they made the escape, which could be responsible for altering the wind in the region and allowing the passage of the people. The Transfiguration of Jesus. For a long time, the Scientific Academy believed that Jesus Christ would have been a character created to guide the biblical text during their construction. This is because the first productions of text and complete books would have been made by Christians, who took the opportunity to include him in the historical events that occurred at that time. However, after centuries of study, an immensity of non-Christian text was collected, where there is hope to find definitive answers in this regard. By analyzing other non-Christian sources, it was discovered that his presence was there, even in moments that were not described by his followers. In this way, even those who did not support him knew of his existence and also of his importance for certain events. The search for non-biblical sources has been a very interesting tool to understand which biblical events are historical moments that were part of Christian beliefs. Very interesting, right? The Great Flood. For many years, the idea of the Great Flood was an event that, look, science didn't support much, no. And you can even understand why it started there. In the story, Noah would have been warned by God of a great flood that would cover everyone in water, and that he would be responsible for creating an ark that would allow him to rescue all the animals that existed. For a long time, this idea remained simply absurd, since to flood the entire Earth from the planet itself, right, there would have to be a sea level higher than the peak of Mount Everest. We're talking about a lot of water, guys, millennia of endless rain for something like this to happen. However, new evidence shows that, in reality, there may have been a miscommunication when Noah considered his world. In reality, he was only referring to the world he knew. Nobody knew the size of the entire planet really back then. So, the whole world to him was as far as he could go. Thus, when analyzing the Sumerian soil, it was discovered that a geological event would have accelerated the melting of the ice caps for a brief period, which caused the sea level to rise a few centimeters each day, causing many cities in the region to be completely covered in only a few months. The Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel appears in biblical text as the place where humanity found itself after the Great Floods, and from there, it could rebuild civilizations, distributing knowledge of biblical text to the whole world. For a long time, this tower remained just a legend. However, more modern explorers may have found evidence of the building that may have been used as an actual Tower of Babel. would actually be a ziggurat, a construction almost 100 meters high that would have been made by the king of Babylon, Nabopolassar, father of Nebuchadnezzar, approximately in the year 610 BC. Originally, the tower would have been built to honor the Mesopotamian deity Marduk. When the people met again after the flood, it would probably have been in this building there, which was named the Tower of Babel. Finally, it is believed that the tower was found by the Roman emperor himself, Alexander the Great, during his conquest of expansion, and in an attempt to revitalize it there, it ended up being destroyed due to an accident. Can you imagine doing something like that? Accidentally knocking over the Tower of Babel? Giants. One of the oldest stories in the Bible is the defeat of the giant Goliath by David, who ended up becoming the king of Israel after this conquest. For a long time, he defended himself that everything could have been a good word, or that he had faced someone much bigger than him there, but well, not at the level of a giant. However, nowadays, there is a portion of those who defend that at some point, we may have divided the planets as a gigantic species of Homo sapiens, but that we ended up extinguishing them during confrontations, such as the story of David and Goliath. The giant bones of the Donovan Lake, the 80,000-year-old bones from Death Valley, the huge skeletons found in Ecuador, and the giant mummies from the Colorado River tunnels are some examples of these finds. Despite this, there's still not enough evidence for this idea to be fully consolidated. There are already some steps that make us think about this past with different eyes, right? Philistine civilization. In the biblical text, a people that were extinct is described in their text, which are basically seen mostly as antagonists that made a direct contrast to the heroic Hebrews there. They were the Philistines. For a long time, it was thought that they could have been created to name the barbarian peoples that they did not really know the origin of. However, after much research, explorer Edward Robinson carried out excavations that found an ancient Philistine city. Although there is no definitive way to connect the lost city to the Philistine civilization, in the center of the city, a marble altar was found that is described more than once in the Bible as places belonging to that lost culture. In this way, if at some point more cultural elements of these people and new ones found in the region are confirmed, of course we may find another ancient human civilization that has remained hidden from us, practically throughout that time being described only in the Bible. The plagues of Egypt. As much as the apocalyptic texts seem to be very violent in relation to the plague that God sent to consume Egypt, it is known that such catastrophes could actually have happened in the region, being caused by natural phenomena. In quotes, right? It all happened because of an oceanic phenomenon that raised the temperatures of the seas, and consequently of the entire atmosphere of the planet. This increase in temperature made Egypt live a small example of what our species is yet to really feel with global warming. This is because, with the increase in temperature, microorganisms began to proliferate more easily, causing diseases to spread and food to spoil much faster. Another phenomenon known as the locust cloud has already been recorded in several places around the world, and it is really catastrophic, family. It's also caused by rising temperatures, where some species of locusts form such huge populations that they live in clouds of hunger, consuming everything they see in front of them. Just to give you an idea, they can eat an entire modern plantation in a few minutes, so imagine the damage it wouldn't do in rural areas of the time, right? Nazareth existed. For a long time, the city of Nazareth was only present in Christian biblical texts, making many people believe in the possibility that the city would have been created along with the history of everyone who was born and lived there. Calm down. The city existed today, but for a long time. It was lost until it was rebuilt in honor of Christ himself. It is known that the city was devastated by the Assyrians, having its history lost in time like the vast majority of cities that were devastated in the Bronze Age and during the beginning of the Roman Empire. But recently, excavations in Israel have found what may actually be the city of Nazareth, as the archaeological site was discovered exactly where the city supposedly existed at that time. Now, As studies advance in the region, they will be able to determine the size of the occupancy of the home where Jesus was supposedly born. One thing is a fact, guys. Against faith, nothing can change, right? But leave your opinion down here in the comments. I'm curious, I'd really like to know. See you in the next video then. A hug, stay well, and see you next time. Thanks.